Hi, good evening. Sorry. Wow, that's loud. Thank you all for being here. It is my honor, privilege to sit down and talk to four of the 18 writers who have contributed to this, what I'm calling a literary guide to Bombay. It's a book called The Only City, edited by Anindita, and 18 different writers have put this together. It's a really interesting read because it gives you Bombay in all her color, past glories, future possible horrors, and the present chaos. I loved it. I urge you all to go read them. I'm not used to doing panels like this with so many writers, so I'm just going to dive in with my connection to Bombay. I view Bombay as a city of freedom. I first visited Bombay aged 7, traveling as an unaccompanied minor from India to Africa, where my parents were. So, from boarding school to my parents. And Bombay was that spot where nobody had their beady eyes on me. It was a place where I could just do what I wanted to do. And I remember the Centaur Hotel, round swimming pool, and Mrs. Vakil's bookshop in that hotel. And so for me, Bombay has always been freedom. And then I moved to Bombay in my middle age to work in Bollywood, slap bang in the center of that commercial stream. And Bombay was a city of work and possibilities and opportunities. And then a decade ago, it became for me a city of diminishing returns, and I ran. So I am one of the fools who left. But I love that city, and it has afforded me much in experience and many other things. So, Anindita, I think I'll start with you. It's the obvious place to start. Why this anthology now, and why this particular mix of writers?
Those are two questions with very long answers. I can answer the first one. I'm a Bombay girl. I take great pride in being a Bombay girl, although I must say that all of us who've come from Bombay have been admiring Calicut and the roads and the green a lot. So the initial impulse was selfish. I had, during COVID, started thinking about a short story set in a Bombay housing complex. By the time I got around to writing it, as it sometimes happens with writers, it took a long time. COVID was over, and I didn't want to revisit the pandemic, so it just became a Bombay story. But that's not the reason one spends 2 years putting an anthology together. So there was that story. Around that time, I happened to meet a Peruvian writer who was in Bombay researching in his next book. And he told me he had written a book of short stories on his city in Peru, which is Arequipa, so it's not as well known as Lima, second largest city. And he'd written it in Spanish. British Council translated it to English. And it was unplanned, but it somehow became this guide to the city for visitors and travelers who wanted to go beyond a history geography introduction. And I started to think, what would that book be for Bombay? Bombay has inspired so much literature and cinema over time. There are lovely anthologies, but the anthologies are either retrospectively curated, so all the way from Manto to, Jeev Patel, Yunus, covering a very wide swath, or they are anthologies by single writers. So I wanted to put together something with contemporary writers who are writing new stories. And I'm really happy that all the stories in the anthology are new and previously unpublished. So that was the goal point. I wanted to create a kind of literary kind of screen grab of Bombay as it is today by 17 other really wonderful writers. In terms of the composition of writers, there are some here on stage, like Namita, who are born and brought up in Bombay. But not everybody in the anthology is a born and brought up person. For me, I was really interested in capturing a diversity in the quality of relationship that each writer has with the city. Jeet has set so much of his writing in Bombay. Amrita's first book is a kind of captures a specific locality of Bombay. There are other writers, Prayag, Diksha, Manu, who all wrote their first novels in the city. So I think each of the 18 writers have an almost alchemic relationship with the city. And I was more interested in that rather than saying writers under 40 or let's pick a writer from each zip code. I thought this was a more interesting way to put an anthology together.
It's a wonderful mix. So, what is Bombay to all of you? Migrants, locals. Namita, you're a dyed in the wool South Bombay girl.
I am.
What is Bombay to you? And what has it transformed? And is it something else today than what it was before for you?
It is constantly transforming. It's a kinetic city. It's a city that never ceases to surprise. And sometimes the surprises are good surprises, and sometimes the surprises are bad surprises. But I think what Bombay represents for me is freedom. And I'll tell you a little quick story as an aside. I mean, it's an old trope to compare Bombay to Delhi, but I have to succumb. I was in Delhi in November, possibly the worst time to be there. But, you know, I really realized why I love Bombay. It's almost like you need to go back to an ex-lover to find out why you're still married to the person you're married.
So many Delhiites in the audience, you're really courting danger.
So, two things happened to me in Delhi which were really of concern, and I'm serious. I'm not even being facetious here. Let's not even enter politics because that's a whole other space. But it was just abysmally grey. It was opaque. You know, there was an opacity in the city that I had never encountered, and I spent a lot of time in Delhi over the years because my extended family is from there. And the second thing that happened that was really disturbing was that I was trying to get back home into a colony, and every gate in the colony was shut. And so I was roaming around with an Uber, inside an Uber, feeling more and more terrified because it was just desolate and completely closed. And, you know, those are things that honestly don't happen in Bombay. And so as a woman, and as somebody who likes to just take public transport at any given time of day and night, I found that really offensive. And I think that one of the signs of a great city is if a woman feels both free and safe. And so for me, that's Bombay. And the second big thing is the cosmopolitanism, which is constantly somewhat compromised because of some political intervention or some incident that happens or, you know, sparks that go off here and there. But it just comes back into that. And it's lovely. And there are issues right now, which we can talk about as we go further, because there is a problem.
A few.
For sure.
Jeet, you're the migrant writer. You're the migrant writer to Bombay. You were the migrant to Bombay. What was Bombay to you? What is it to you today?
You know, I have no loyalty to Bombay. I have no feeling for Bombay. I have no sympathy for Bombay any more than I do for any other city. And I feel compelled to defend Delhi. Namita.
Sure.
Delhi is a beautiful city, far prettier than Bombay will ever be. Those streets, Lutyens Delhi, gorgeous. You know, the only problem with Delhi is that breathing becomes an existential choice, to breathe or not to breathe. Other than that, Bombay has nothing on Delhi. Let's be honest. Come on, you know.
Safety for women. Jeez, I mean, I know you wouldn't think of that, but Bombay wins that one hands down.
Really?
Safety for women? Yes, it does.
Okay,
Absolutely.
true. Yes.
Yeah.
But other than that, when Bombay became
Good fish,
when Bombay,
fresh fish and seafood.
it's no longer
Wins that one.
also this.
I mean,
you know, we're making a huge mistake on the stage. We're talking about Bombay, which is a city that no longer exists. It's Mumbai.
It is Mumbai. True.
And it is a parochial town full of old class and caste divisions where people are out to kill you just because you have the wrong name or because you eat eggs in Malabar Hill.
Are they not
or
in Delhi?
Walkeshwar.
You can't eat eggs in Malabar.
We're
Hill.
not.
Sorry.
We're not. Okay, I'm going to
Walkeshwar.
stop this. I'm the referee. No more Bombay versus Delhi. We're sticking with Bombay, Mumba Devi, as we know her and love her. I'm not sentimental about Bombay, but man, it beats a lot of places for a woman. And it's also the only place really in this country where you can get something done. It's an efficient city. Actually, things work and people are there to work. No? Okay, Jeet's being a contrarian. Amrita, you're Bombay?
Yeah. I was born in Bombay. I did not grow up in Bombay. I grew up in Gujarat, and my nuclear family was in Gujarat. We moved every 2 to 3 years. I've lived in Ahmedabad, Baroda, Surat. I lived in Godhra for a year as well. But my entire extended family was in Bombay, and I would visit every summer vacation, every winter vacation. So while my home was moving every few years, Bombay was a fixed point in an otherwise itinerant childhood. And then I moved to Bombay, which was by then Mumbai, when I was in high school. So I went to junior college and college in the city. So this is to say that my earliest memories of the city, my core relationship with the city, is inflected with a child's gaze, right? And the mood is very much young child on vacation with all her cousins, experiencing full freedom. And I carry that feeling to this day. When I moved back to the city as an adult after living in the US for 6 years, in Delhi for 5 years, which I absolutely love and miss to this day, I had to run a house in Bombay. I had to pay rent in the city. I had to commute to work. And that relationship quickly soured. It's a very difficult city to live in. Even with a short commute, taking public transport or taking autos or Ubers, whatever your mode of transport is, it is a city that wears you down. But now, after COVID, when that relationship has eased a little bit, when I don't have to commute as often as I did before, I actually look at the city with newfound appreciation because the things that irked me maybe 10 years ago, the traffic, the crowds, those are the things that make the city special. Those are the things that make the city safe for women, right? The city is crowded, that allows more women to be out in the streets late in the evening, late at night, early in the morning. There are no closed doors, there are no closed gates. So the chaos is also what makes it what it is, which is a city that promises, opportunities, a city that promises change, a city that tells you you can, or that makes you believe that you can be who you want to be. You can make something of yourself.
Anindita?
So I feel I've written about my relationship and love for Bombay in a whole editor's note, so I'll keep it short. But my parents moved to Bombay when I was 2 from Kolkata. And my relationship to Bombay is that of, it's not a toxic relationship. It's just blind and deep love. In the way that I know there are flaws, in a way that you know your lover has flaws, but I will defend Bombay, and Jeet and I will talk after this at dinner till my dying breath. I know there are multiple problems, from practical issues such as roads right now, to a lot of South Bombay becoming vegetarian, to the pockets, all of it. But for me, the greatest thing that Bombay has that this other city doesn't have is the people. And that's what this book was kind of anchored on, not on landmarks or, let's talk about Marine Drive or the history of CST, but the idea of just Bombay characters for whom Bombay is the only city in which they can exist. I wouldn't over anchor on the women's safety bit because I did live in Delhi for 3 years pre-Uber. I felt incredibly safe. I had the taxi driver numbers of all the local Sardarji taxi stands. But I feel I was constantly reminded in Delhi that I'm a woman. And as a person, as a woman growing up in Bombay, that was not a reality for me. I was a person. I was never reminded of my gender. I was never conscious of it. And I think I like that, and I just love the people of Bombay, which are a unique breed.
Please.
It's for some reason Bombay, in the popular imagination, in film, in photography, in books, in poetry, because there have been so many amazing poets out of Bombay, the tendency is to romanticize it. And something I hear a lot about Bombay is that how resilient the people are. It's something, every time something horrible happens, a stampede or a natural disaster,
Spirit of Bombay.
the spirit of Bombay. And
It's a construct.
and what is the spirit of Bombay? The reason the people get back to work the next day is because they have no choice. They need the money. That is the spirit of Bombay.
Oh, I agree.
It's money, you know?
Oh, I agree.
And there's nothing romantic about money. Or is there?
Because it's very much about the now and the possible future. AI, Bombay, women. You work in tech. Tell me what the future holds. You're building it as we speak, right?
Yeah.
What does it hold for that city? What does it hold for women?
I don't know. I will start by talking about my story a little bit and why I wrote it. So, in all my fiction, I am interested in the lives of women, and I think in the last 5 years, that has sharpened into, wanting to explore how technology shapes the lived experiences of women. And I work in tech for social good, tech for public health. And a lot of my work centers around AI. And, we tend to think of technology as something that's built by men, built for men. But there's a lot of female labor that goes into making AI. And I worked on this project where we were trying to build a visual weighing machine. So this was a phone-based app where you could take a video of a baby and estimate the weight of the baby. And this was something that was designed to be deployed in public health settings. But where does the AI get its intelligence from? It gets its intelligence from, thousands of videos of babies that were annotated frame by frame by young girls, right? And I met a lot of annotators who would come to our office every day. There were 7 or 8 young girls, 17, 18 years old. What really struck me was all of them were first generation digital workers. And there was a lot of pride they carried about their work, that they got to work with computers. And some of them were attending night college after doing a full day of work as well. And I found that really interesting. And they are not thought of as knowledge workers. They are not thought of as people who are helping build AI in any way, but they are. This is something I wanted to explore. Of course, I mean, I don't want to talk about the future of the gig economy or, how precarious this kind of employment is. That's a topic for another day. But I wanted to explore, knowledge work through 2 women characters. One of them is a data annotator. Her name is Saili. She comes from a family of women. She's been raised by a single mother with 3 daughters. And she's someone who's very grateful for the opportunities she's been given. Very lovely character to write, very optimistic, very positive. And her supervisor, her boss at the job, is somebody who's also her neighbor. So Saili has grown up in a SRA building, so one of these slums that's been redeveloped into, into a set of fancy high rises with one building for the original inhabitants. So Saili and Ananya, her boss, are neighbors, but with very different outlook. And when there is a moment of crisis, both of them react very differently. So we were talking about the spirit of Bombay.
It's interesting because they both react almost as if they're 2 faces of the city.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That mythical spirit of Bombay where Saili is the one who's
Yeah.
always there, wants
Yeah.
to help, wants to.
Yeah.
And there's the Ananya who kind of looks away and really would rather just walk by and not
Yeah.
get involved. And it's
Yeah.
the twin faces of that city.
No, and that was on my mind. And I see Saili as somebody who believes in this very simple social contract that if the city has done you a good turn, you have to pay it forward, right? And it's not something that many of us explicitly think about, but I would like to believe that, at least I intrinsically believe that. And Ananya is someone who probably doesn't see the ways in which society has given her what she has. I mean, I think
That's
if you
just the
if-
standard blindness of
yeah,
privilege.
yeah. If you've grown up in an upper middle class, upper caste home, it's very easy to believe that you are where you are because of your own merit and
Yeah.
not because of what society has done for you. But somebody like Saili is more, I would say, sensitive to the ways in which, the people around her, society around her has made her who she is. And she feels a sense of responsibility towards, towards the city, which Ananya does not.
Anindita, your story, an upwardly mobile couple who moved from small towns to Bombay, have done very well, upwardly mobile. They moved up, they moved into a new building, COVID hits, and then they're introduced to this whole other world that they haven't been privy to before. Where were you going with that? What was that about?
I'm interested in the idea of fitting in Bombay, and there's a line in the story that I deeply believe is true, that nobody asks this steel couple, when they go to the farmer's market, and if they wear the crushed linen clothes like everybody else, nobody asks them where they're from. That's not the first question people ask people in Bombay. You do ask people, what do you do? And they do well, right? They work in advertising. They live in Bandra, so they eat avocado. They're in all the right boxes, and because they are conscious of their background from these boring steel towns, I think they love that nobody asks where they're from. So, for people coming from outside, I do think Bombay is more accepting than certain other cities. We won't talk about Delhi again, but say let's Calcutta, where people will ask you which school, family name, where your family home was, which club your parents belong to, within 5 minutes of meeting you. Club, because there are, like, Calcutta has a club culture, so which club you belong to also tells people
But
a
Bombay has
lot.
that club culture too, doesn't it? I
But
mean, especially
Calcutta-
South Bombay. Are you a Willingdon person? Are you a
but
Bombay
Calcutta
person?
really has it because there aren't other people to hang out. Yeah. Calcutta has a very striated club culture. So if you be a Bengal club person or a Calcutta club person or Tolly club. So I was interested in the idea of fitting in what they've navigated. They've arrived where they dreamt they wanted to. But for me, it's more the story of Aparna, the woman, that she now has everything she thought she wanted, maybe as a 18-year-old girl in Bhilai. But what next? When you have everything you want, what next? And Bombay has given her everything she wanted. So I think it's that idea of what is normal. Are they normal now? But now they meet people who make them question their idea of normal. So
I also think, I mean, one of the things I liked about your story was the sense of, Bombay allows you, like you said, to be anonymous in a way, right? You don't have to be somebody to get somewhere in Bombay. And you double down on that whole thing when they're all playing apartment shuffle. There's that whole thing of nobody actually ever explicitly tells this couple what they're getting into, do they? Someone just comes and puts a tab in their mouth. Someone just says, pick up a thing from, this whole shuffle game we're playing. Is the anonymity that Bombay offers a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it depends on who you are. Was it Hemingway or was it Fitzgerald who said, I find large parties really private? One of them. So I think when, like Amrita said, right, when there is chaos, I think chaos actually can afford a deep intimacy and privacy. When you can be anonymous, a lot of writers like really quiet spaces, want to go away to a hill station to write. I feel I can find deep solitude in crowd. And so I think Bombay is what you make her to be. You can participate in the chaos, but it's also very easy to retreat. And a bunch of the stories, speaking for the writers who are not here, actually speak about loneliness. Jairaj Singh's story, Yogesh Maitreya's story. There's a line in Jairaj's story that says, in Diksha Basu's story actually, that says, if she left tomorrow, the city would go on as if she never existed. So I think anonymity can be a beautiful thing if you're happy with your solitude.
Yeah, I agree. Jeet, I'm going to come to your story last. Namita, old world, a certain amount of nostalgia, a certain amount of this is what Bombay used to be, and it's passing on, it's metamorphosizing into something else. The world that you build there, but also a young girl who seems, and I use this word advisedly, delusional. I mean, completely.
Yeah, I think there was a
About
little
the
bit of
reality.
mental unwellness happening there. But that story is set in one of the oldest sort of citizens of Bombay is the Parsi, right? And I had to bring the Parsi in because they have been so responsible for a certain quiet cosmopolitanism, a certain ability to wear wealth with unbelievable lightness. There is a biographer of J.R.D. Tata here, and he was telling me about how incredibly low-key he was, etc. So I had to bring in the Parsi. I've grown up around these people, and they're just fabulously eccentric, unique, and such a big part of Bombay, especially South Bombay. So yes, there's the old world because I think it's set in the 80s. I talk about the cerulean blue turban of the finance minister, etc. But it's also about there's a kind of an implicit corruption and jugaad in every Bombayite, and it's a very benign corruption. But this Parsi lady in this story is a very intriguing character because she plays like crazy, and then we see that she's actually not. And there is this other person. There's also kind of like, I specifically went into all the communities. So I was doing a bit of an Amar Akbar Anthony in that story. But I really think that's a big part of Bombay, right?
Yes, it is.
And it is, so there is a Catholic family and a Parsi family and a Muslim family, a very sort of Muslim light family. Because, Bombay has these characters and they're all just all over the place doing their thing and
Did you say
interacting.
Muslim light?
Yes, I did.
What do you mean by that?
Because that particular kind of family, it's a very particular Muslim light, which is very particular to Bombay. As in, they're sort of like a trader community. They're very, I think their religion is business. I think most people's religion in Bombay is business, honestly. And it's a very interesting, strange thing which nobody actually says, but it's really
It's a mercantile city. It always has been.
yeah, it is. And it sort of strangely saves the city because everyone's like, aage badho, move forward, get on with it. Like, shit is going on. And then somehow it just kind of pulls itself out of that and then moves forward.
The young girl.
I'm sorry?
The young girl.
The young girl.
Her kind of delusions of grandeur and her aspiration for the good life without actually mucking in for it, as it were.
But that's such a big part of what Bombay is, right? Everyone is just aspiring.
But everyone also, I mean, most people work for it in Bombay. I mean,
Yeah.
Bombay works you, doesn't it?
So she was just a character. I mean, she's in no way representative of anything that's particular to Bombay. I was just sort of setting up a stage, a Maupassant stage, which was going to have that twist in the end. But really the idea was to kind of recreate the Parsi vibe. It's that the old world, a certain kind of a genteel vibe, but also with its own kind of dark side, And I think that's what I was trying to do with that.
That's lovely. Jeet.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
Speaking of the Parsi business houses and Bombay. And I absolutely agree that the religion of Bombay is business, is money. But there's something that we're ignoring here. And that is that the money of Bombay as a city was built on opium.
Yes.
It was opium that built Bombay and made it this wealthy, that still applies. And
Parsi money came from there.
exactly.
Yeah.
The families that funded the opium trade to China were the Parsi families.
Yep.
And in cahoots with the British East India Company, which at that time was the largest drug cartel in the world,
Yep.
they made their fortunes, the Parsi families.
Yes, they
and
did.
being Parsis and being intelligent, they knew that this is not a legacy they want to be saddled with. So the next generation invested in art,
Philanthropy.
in hospitals, in libraries, in drinking water fountains, in 100 things that make us think, wow, the Parsis, man, they're so great. But let's remember that that money is tainted as all hell.
Yes,
That
it
is
is.
black money.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
There's no
Absolutely.
good guys, bad guys in Bombay. You know, it's like whoever gets.
They're just rich guys and poor guys.
Really, it's true. It's really true.
So now your story, Jeet. I mean, I read it, and for me personally, by the time I got to the end of the story, I kind of let out a whoop of sheer visceral joy at the end of it. But that's me. It's a dark story.
Until you said joy, I was expecting sheer visceral disgust,
No.
fear,
Joy, absolute joy at the end one of the characters comes to. But that's just me. It's a dark story. You go back to a certain world, a world of addiction, dealers, covert operations, all of that stuff. And then looking at where we are with, Nepean Sea Road starting the whole vegetarian movement, and it's spreading like a rash everywhere. What made you go down that road?
I have a friend who used to live on Little Gibbs Road in Malabar Hill, and then he moved to Walkeshwar, and then he made the huge error of moving to Lower Parel, one of those Lodha buildings. But when he was living in Walkeshwar, he said that he's Gujarati, a vegetarian poet. He said that on Sundays he liked to fry eggs for breakfast, except that they would search his garbage for eggshells, for fish scales, for chicken bones, and if they found anything like that, you were out. You were intimidated. You were ostracized. So that really just stayed with me for years. And then when Anindita asked me to write something for this, I just wondered what would happen if you were to push that a little bit forward, and if that were to take over our lives in Bombay, what would happen? And this came out of that.
It's incredible. I mean, I was reading it, and not to give you any spoilers, but there's a bit in the story where there are public executions. And I remember as a kid, my father spent a little time in Saudi Arabia teaching, again, way back in the 80s. And I remember visiting there once, and we were driving out on a Friday evening with my father's American colleague who was sitting in the car, and he said, that's Chop Chop Square. Chop Chop Square, where the public executions would happen. And I remember I was reading your story, and I was like, ooh, Hanging Gardens, Chop Chop Square. These stories, each of them, all of them, I mean, they cover a pretty large geography of the city. They could make you love and hate Bombay if you've never been there or you don't know it. It could leave you a little confused about what to do with that city. But to me, this feels like a love story. All of these stories, even the sort of near future dystopian ones.
Oh, it's definitely a love story.
Yeah, to me it is. It is about Why are you laughing? You don't think it is? I think it is.
No, I just said with food, it's a love story with food. No, but Miriam, I do want to interject there and say there are, I would say, 3 or 4 stories that don't paint favorable picture of Bombay. But yes, it does come from deep love, because when you have deep love, you have deep disappointment. But I'm really happy that they're not all Bombay so great, romances, movies. There are some stories that make even dyed in the wool Bombay lovers rethink certain aspects. And I'm happy about their inclusion. Yeah.
No, I think it sort of covers all bits of Bombay in that sense. And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination sentimental about that city. I moved to it as a pretty hard-boiled middle-aged woman, so I'm not mawkish about Bombay, but it is a useful city. In the Indian context, it's one of the few places where at least I found that I could get things done as somebody who's creative, as somebody who's not part of the money world, as somebody who's not part of the old world, who's not. And I just do want to say there are many gated places in Bombay today. They just don't look like the Delhi places, but a whole bunch of buildings where you can't get in.
Yeah, yeah.
And people, separate lifts and all kinds of caste systems operating. So there is that. But for all of you, I'm curious, when you write about a city, is she a character? Is Bombay a he or a she in your heads? How does that work? Do you give her personality? I say her.
I think Bombay is a she. Mumbai is certainly not. Mumbai is indeterminate gender, probably trans, but you don't know into which gender it's transitioning into. It might be a future alien gender that doesn't exist at the moment. I mean, I haven't regretted for an instant not living there anymore.
Neither do I.
And I just have to say, I'm just astonished that there are so many people in Calicut here in this audience who care about Bombay.
I think they care about writing and reading. Yes? Yeah. I'm just looking at the time. 15 minutes. How much time? I mean, yeah, I was going to say, do we have people who have questions? I think the questions. Better, more interesting ones?
Questions are after the 15.
Oh, up? Yeah. No, it's within the 15. Yeah, no, I've done 3 sessions already today. Anybody with questions? And hi, desk, mic undo. Any questions, anybody? Or can I go on? Because I have many more.
We're
Okay,
moving to the
I'm going on.
interactive session. Any questions, please?
You were talking a lot of time lives in Mumbai, but you didn't mention the train.
Oh, there's a wonderful story on the train.
Because in Geography Channel, Mega Cities, one series about cities,
Yeah.
they only focused on Mumbai in India. And they showed only the train living, how the rich people live in India, in Mumbai town, but the working class people live
Outside.
outside.
Come in. Yeah.
And I happened to been there 20 years back. 15 days I have been in Bombay. At that time it was Bombay. I happened to travel
By the train.
by electric train. We didn't get seats. But after 15, 20 minutes, 2-3 rows of people stood up and told us to sit. But I thought they were getting down there. No, it's a culture.
Sharing your seat.
Sharing your seats.
Yeah. I mean, look, the trains in Bombay, they'll all agree with me. They have been romanticized as the kind of lifeline of the city, but they are actually the lifeline of the city because without the working classes and the lower middle classes that use those trains every day, that city would grind to a halt. So they're crucial, the trains. And in this book, there is a wonderful story that doesn't look at all those boring things, that looks at a gay man, a little lonely in Bombay, getting a hand job in a train. And it's a wonderful story. There are many like that. But did you have a question, sir? Or you were just telling us your...
I was just telling, you didn't mention that.
Oh, no,
It
but...
was my question. Why you didn't mention that train journey?
Oh, it's mentioned in the book, but there are 18 stories, so I urge you to go read them. You'll find the trains in there. Any more stories? Questions, sorry.
I remember a poem that was published in that poetry magazine that the Poetry Circle used to bring out in Bombay. That maybe just occurred to me, might be the source of the story. No, it was someone else's. It was a 2-line poem, and it said, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not sure what the exact wording is, but it went, by taking the trains in Bombay every day, I became a homosexual.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's a good poem. No more questions?
Hi.
Oh, yes. There's a... Where's the
Over
mic?
here.
Oh, sorry.
So just like the name, Bombay to Mumbai, 80s Mumbai is done over there, or still you can see the 80s Mumbai here, Mumbai.
Repeat that last bit.
Like it changed just like the name, the 80s Mumbai is faded away.
Oh, I don't know. Has 80s
And
Mumbai
one
faded
thing,
away?
I've been doing business very recently over there in Miraj, Nasik, that side.
Can you do me one favor for
To
a minute?
remove this?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All people prefer lips, I think.
Well, no,
So,
I just can't make out what you're
okay.
saying.
So I've been doing business over there in Nasik and Miraj. So I thought like the people over there are so naive that they are eating mostly vegetarian and more connected with the soil and all. And their mitti also is very dark and very uh, fruitful. So all those stuffs are there, and I see you guys mentioning that because you guys been more into the local, people who are living in the cities and all. But there are things which are there in 80s which are still there, and the faded away things are like you have seen the 80s more, which we never explored. So what do you think? It's there.
So you want to know which bits of 80s Bombay still survive in 21st century Mumbai? Is that what you're asking? Okay. Anybody? Please.
I think one of the most abiding features of Bombay is the sea. You know, Bombay is almost incidental. The people come and go, but it's the ocean, and it literally has been there. It's the force that kind of like keeps it unpolluted. It's just where people gather to let go of all the like stresses of the week. If you go on Sunday on Marine Drive, it is just like packed and vibrant and fantastic, you know? And so I think the ocean is something that remains. I think a certain kind of it's a certain kind of a predatory greed that will just always be there in Bombay. It's a port city like Calicut. And so there'll just always be these people coming in to just like harpao. And then, you know, you think it's all over, and then a new lot of people will come in and they'll just do the same thing. It's very interesting because I work in the Times of India, and, you know, where all of us are perennially talking about how the city is over. And one of my jobs was to look at the letters to the editor that were sent in like 100 years ago. And I promise you, they were saying the exact same things 100 years ago. So there's a kind of a perpetual sense of like, okay, it's going to be over, and it's never over in Bombay. It's like it just resurrects and it goes and does more predatory things.
Yeah.
So funny.
If I understood your question, you asking if there are parts of 80s Bombay that are still there, I would say that different areas, different people in Bombay exist in many different decades, not just 80s. There are still homes in Grant Road which have the toilet at the end of the corridor. Even though each house has its own toilet, it's because of the way the drainage was built. There are areas that are very parochial, there are areas that are very cosmopolitan. So many different centuries, in fact, I would think exist. But also because we've been talking about Bombay, Mumbai quite a bit in this conversation, I do want to say that all the writers were given the choice to use, in terms of just the pure linguistic framing of it, to use Mumbai or Bombay. And I do acknowledge that more of us use the word Bombay because we were writing about Bombay. And if we are to be honest, we still live in Bombay. Jeet still visits Bombay when he does. Um, Bombay, I think the name might have changed to Mumbai, but we retain some idea of Bombay. Namita certainly does more than us. So, yeah.
Oh, I certainly did when I moved there as well, I have to say. Though when I left, Mumbai came to my lips a lot more easily. You know what I mean? Sorry, there was a young lady somewhere here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Amrita. Because yes, my favorite author of Milk and that was the book with which I started falling in love with Bombay when I used to live there. I take offense in the Muslim light comment. I just want to say that because as a Muslim girl trying to navigate the city, Islamophobia and land jihad was quite a thing that I faced, and I was also out there to work and find home. I've also read Narcopolis and absolutely a huge fan. I only read two authors here. In the whole conversation, I realized or sort of noticed that everyone was writing about Bombay, but I think less as a backdrop of a city, but more about elements that drove like a narrative engine, like elements of Bombay. If you can probably speak about like that, using Bombay or Mumbai as a backdrop versus narrative engine in your writing?
You actually, I can start. You actually asked that as well, whether Bombay was a character or a backdrop. I think it's definitely a character, and most of the stories definitely in mine. I do think that, especially since the brief was that let's not anchor on landmarks, the idea that the pace of a city or the dynamicism of a city does impact the characters who live in it and how they move. So if Bombay as a city is constantly changing, Bombay is a city that glorifies metamorphosis, it rewards change. The characters too want change, they're not happy. None of the stories are about someone sitting and being inspired by a bird coming to their window, which is a lovely story, and we should enjoy birds coming to our window. But all the stories are about some great moments of change or great action. And it's because it's set in Bombay and you can't sit still. You have to keep moving because the city is moving. Sometimes, like in Jeet's story, in very radical and extreme ways, and sometimes, like in Amrita's story, in very quiet ways. But it's definitely a character. I wonder what the others think.
I love the term character engine, and I think that's exactly that. I think for my story, it happened somewhat subconsciously. I started off with these characters, and for me, what I wanted to explore was the idea of these two women at work. So the what I said about the story about these two women displaying or illustrating two different sides of the city was not a very conscious choice. It was very organic. But I thought of these two characters, Saili and Ananya, as two girls who've grown up in Bombay. So I suppose subconsciously the city had shaped them and it shaped the story as well.
About the city you're not sure you love?
Did you say character energy or main character energy?
Character engine.
one thing that always occurs to me about Bombay, if you are a photographer and you have your camera on and you're walking down the street, any street, and you trip over your shoelace and by accident you click a picture, it'll probably be a great picture. It's an incredibly photogenic city, and it makes sense to have set a book of stories in Bombay rather than any other city, because there are aspects of Bombay, the sea, a line, that coast, the certain buildings, certain neighborhood that all of us know visually. It has a lot to do with Bollywood, but also with novels and photography that's come out of that city. Of course, it's a main character.
A very interesting discussion. So my question is about the concept of migration. So before the prominent Gulf migration in South, there was a very huge shift in the migration pattern, at least from the southern India. So has any of your stories talked about the Bombay migration from the south, especially from Kerala or Tamil Nadu or places from the south, because that has been a very important metropolitan idea that was there before. So, has any of the stories talked about that, or what are your perspectives on that?
Well, I mean, I have a perspective on it. I don't think any story speaks specifically about southern migrants to Bombay, do they? Not that I remember. But I mean, look, like every migrant community that moves somewhere, the southern communities have built. Okay, here's a story I love. I used to be a cigarette smoker. And when I moved from England to Bombay, there was a particular kind of cigarette that I used to smoke, which wasn't available. It's not an Indian cigarette. And the only way I could find that cigarette was to go to Colaba, onto the causeway, and to find the cigarette walas, every one of whom is a Malayali and a descendant of the old school Malayali smugglers. Remember 70s, 80s, when a lot of the smuggling, Haji Mastan time, most of his troops were Malayalis. They still run those networks and they still run shops. And so for me, the southern migration to Bombay still makes Mumbai work very well for a migrant like me. So I love that, I have to say.
There's no smuggler, but Manu Joseph's story is about a young journalist from Chennai moving to Bombay. Although somehow his origin in Chennai is not a very important part of the story, but that might answer your question. And Yogesh's character moves from Nagpur to Bombay, which is at least a little bit south of Mumbai.
Besides, in my opinion, Bombay is in the south.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. I think we're out of time. Thank you, everybody, for this chat, for this book. Please go out, get it.
One last question. There's a gap. There's a gap that needs to be filled.
Which is?
What was the brand of cigarette?
You don't want to know. This is Kerala.
I really want to know. Was it Capstan?
Capstan.
You know, that's in Jeet's story.
Yes. Yes, Capstan. But yeah, no, I was amazed at finding this bunch of relatives who made my life so much easier. And it was so nice then to find that connection to back in the day. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, guys.
Thank you to Jeet Thayil, Namita Devi Dayal, Amrita Mahale, Anindita Ghose for this engaging and interesting conversation, and to Miriam Joseph for moderating this session.